Welcome to the BioBytes Podcast, brought to you by Verista.
Hello, everyone.
I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Bosco.
And I'm the other host, EJ Strelo. And today, we reflect on our time at the ISPE San Francisco Bay Area Chapter's annual Vendor Night, which this year was combined with the annual CEO Night at Oracle Park in San Francisco.
The Vendor CEO Night is a night for biotech industry professionals to congregate, socialize, network, show off their products and services, and hear from some high-level executives about their pipelines and technologies. This year was really special as we haven't actually hosted an event in 2 years due to the pandemic. It was truly great to see everybody in person.
And so I helped volunteer in the coordination of the event, and I remember we were about 2 months out from the actual event when we finally got the contract signed. So all the logistics from marketing to the actual deliverables happened in about 2 months. And I think that's a pretty amazing feat if you take into account upwards of almost 2,000 attendees in over 100 different companies.
Now, before we get to the thick of this, all this could not have been possible without our volunteers. We had roughly 50 total volunteers on the night. Folks who took an hour or so from the event to help with vendor check-ins, guest check-ins, the setup, and finally the takedown. As a team, we cannot thank you enough. So, EJ, let's talk about ISPE for a second. You and I are both involved. We're on our own committees, and we try and do as much as we can between networking and really making a good cause within the ISPE community. I think this is a really good segue into our very own Ala Eid interviewing Lillian Chung at the Bolt Company. They both kind of talk about, ISPE Vendor Night and what has ISPE done for them. I think it's kind of an interesting take we should listen to.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm under the impression that ISPE is one of those entities where you get out of it what you put into it. And I think given how much Lillian's put into it and what she's received out of it, especially as of late, and I won't necessarily get into that, it's really profound. So let's take a second. Let's hear what she has to say.
Hello, everyone. This is Ala Eid with Delta Project Management, and I have Lillian Chung with me from the Bolt Company. We're going to talk to her quickly about ISPE and what that means for her. We're at the ISPE Vendor Night. It's pretty packed in here. So, Lillian, how are you? How's tonight going?
Oh, it's going great.
So what does ISPE mean for you, and what has that done for you career-wise, personally? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm just so impressed with the folks at ISPE. Really, you can feel the love. Everyone seems to know each other. I transferred my focus in my career about 3 years ago. I used to be a designer, and I did a lot of commercial TIs, and I didn't know much about life science. And then I joined a new company that actually built life science projects. And that's the first time I heard ISPE, and I just thought, what a fun thing. They had an extra ticket, so I was there for Fun Day. Yeah, that just sold me to be on that bus. That was amazing. But, it's a little daunting when you're going into a new professional networking organization. You don't know anyone. And I really think for myself, the power of ISPE came up around 2020 when we were hit by the pandemic. Up to that point, I was probably a backseat member, like just not knowing. And in 2020, I still remember where everyone was just slammed with this idea of being sheltered in place. And I was really inspired and touched by the leaders at ISPE. They really wanted to take this opportunity to unite forces, to not let people feel like they're alone. It was always about how do we bring value to our members. And there was many of us who remember how we were supposed to roll out a new program every week. That was a heavy lift, and we had to move fast. And thankfully, the way we were able to roll out new programs that were virtually offered and for free was to team up with our San Diego and LA chapters. And so there was just a lot of synergy and camaraderie, and I really learned a lot just from how caring the folks are. And truly, ISPE is doing things. I know it's set up to be pharmaceutical engineering, but if you look at women in pharma, Anamika is doing amazing, trying to bring it to the forefront to support the women. Also, the young professionals, remember when we did that? Yeah. And I just love it because it's always thinking about the next generation. It's not about the decision makers of today, but it's about how to bring in the young people and engage them and give them a way to grow. So it's just, I think they just do a wonderful job of being inclusive and relevant to our society.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I wanted to touch on one thing that you said. You had mentioned that it almost felt daunting to, come into this new position, this new industry, and you joined ISPE. So what did ISPE do for you to make you feel more comfortable, and what made you step into this role and be more involved?
Well, I would say your very own Faraz. He was so welcoming. So he was running the programs committee at the time.
Yeah.
And truly, he just really was very generous with his energy and welcomed me on board. And I think what really threw me into the deep end was he asked me to be moderator for one of the programs. And I really, not knowing many people, to be up on stage, everyone was so supportive. This is also a very small community of folks. And so over time, you get to see the same names. And so in terms of my career, I feel like in a very short span of time, I've got to know a lot of the key players and decision makers.
That's great. That's so great to hear. Is there any or one piece of advice that you could give to younger professionals moving into this industry?
Yes, I would say to get involved. I mean, I would say the best way it's really about putting your energy in. Like, if you don't spend a lot of energy in something, you're not going to get much out of it. So for a young person, I would highly recommend that they just look into joining a committee, and that really puts you at the table to just play such a larger role. And it's a huge learning curve for anyone. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah,
and I hope you enjoy the rest of vendor night.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Thank you.
Man, I just love hearing Lillian's story. It's really inspirational to hear how Lillian took really her life by the reins, got connected, networked, worked at ISPE, and really made it her own and drove through that. It's, again, really inspirational.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, like I said earlier, you get out of it what you put into it. And I think having ISPE sort of provide you with the resources, even though it's on you to sort of take the action, it's easier to take the action than it is to look for the resources on your own.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a really good segue, right, to Avneet Kang, who's the vice president of Pan Pacific Chemical. For us, our chairman was able to interview Avneet and really talk about, what everybody's been focusing on the last few years, which is COVID, working remotely, networking, and how do you handle the mental health along the way? We all can't forget about the human side of work, right? So this is, a good transition into that discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting how things have sort of changed over the years, where previously you'd be spending more time at work than you would at home, seeing your wife and kids, dog, or whatever. It's a little bit different now that everything's through Zoom or through LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I mean, without further ado, here's Avneet Kang from Pan Pacific Chemical, and let's hear what he has to say.
Hey, I'm here with Avneet Kang. Avneet is with Pan Pacific Mechanical. Lovely to see you. It's brilliant to be back in person, isn't it?
It's great for us. It's been a long time, and it's absolutely amazing to see everybody together again.
I feel like I genuinely did not see you throughout the entire pandemic. What have you been up to?
I wish I could say that I had the opportunity to stay at home, right? We've been busy down south with a lot of projects, right? Even though pandemic took a hold of a lot of things, but at the same time, you still have medicines that you have to make for a lot of people, right? And these projects are, ongoing, and been quite busy dealing with those projects.
Well, I mean, I think we were all classified as essential workers and had to continue working. That's a great service, right? I mean, we're providing in a public health crisis as well. So, really proud of you guys. I met you when you were with a previous employer, and you and I both teamed up. I want to say like a decade ago on some projects with some of our mutual clients. I've watched you develop into a real leader in the industry. Do you want to share with some of our listeners, tell us a little bit about your journey, how you started and where you're at today?
Well, I started as a project engineer, and it all started back in 2012, almost a decade ago, as you stated. And, it was eye-opening that how different this industry is, and how openly people accepted you and mentored you. And that was a big part of my journey, right, to where I am today. It wasn't just myself, but it was all the other people involved who guided me and groomed me into the position that I am today.
That's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'm a big believer in the community makes us all better. And knowing you a little bit, I'm assuming that you've taken on those lessons and you're implementing those in the workplace with some of the younger engineers you work with. I mean, throughout the pandemic, what would you say were like the key qualities that you had to really dig in to pull out and, to keep your head held high? I mean, it was kind of difficult at times. Mental health all of us were feeling challenged. Was there anything in particular that you sort of really leaned into that helped you stay motivated and channel that good energy towards responding to the public health crisis?
Well, like I said before, even during my journey, one of the biggest advantages that I had, that I was surrounded by people who were there to help me grow up. Every time I faced a challenge, there was somebody I can talk to who can help me through this. And during the pandemic, I think especially the young engineers lost that to somewhat, because they lost that avenue to talk to real experts in the field, right? And now how do you keep those guys motivated? And so what we did, as a company, that we started having every week, we had Zoom meetings with the entire group, right? And then it was an open forum, ask questions, right? Very much so that the opportunity, this is not afforded when you don't have the pandemic. You talk openly about your project, and you inquired about you divulged your challenges, and the other people helped you out. And even though it was not as great as having the real experts, right? But I think it went a long way to keep our young engineers engaged.
Absolutely fantastic. One final question. If you have anything that you wanted to say to a young mechanical engineer that's coming out of college and she's not familiar with the workplace and she's walked into a virtual environment, what would be sort of the key message that you would share with them to keep their head in the game?
I can only share my own story, right? Is that it's very simple. Everybody will face challenges. Everybody will go through challenges, right? Just don't lose faith. There's a lot of people who are there to help you and support you. Ask questions. This is not this difficult, right? As long as you ask the right questions, people will help you.
Inspirational.
I'm really glad that Firas and Avneet were able to catch up after 3 years. I personally felt, listening to this for the first time, was Avneet is so genuine, and Firas cares about his relationship with Avneet, and Avneet cares about everybody else. He really cares about networking, keeping everybody engaged and happy, and that's great to hear in this industry. And to be honest, I think keeping everybody connected can be, quite difficult at times. So how do you keep everybody engaged? And I think Mark Jamowski, who you're about to hear next, is going to really play into this, because he talks about his liquor business, especially being in Nevada, and keeping everybody engaged and kind of moving forward to the greater good or the goal of what the company has to offer. So without further ado, here's Mark.
Hey, I've got with me the most amazing Mark Jamowski.
Wow, what an amazing memory.
What an amazing man. Mark actually was a former Deltoid at some stage, but Mark was also a client at some stage. So
yes,
so he's played it. He's played it from every angle.
Uh-huh.
And absolutely fabulous to see you here, man.
You too.
You look healthy.
You look really well. I was a little surprised with the white hair. But
it is very white. It's very white.
It's very distinguished. It's very appropriate for your...
So the reason why I want to talk to you, Mark, is because you're not just an architect. You're an entrepreneur, right? And I know this because I went on your website and tell me a little bit about your. I don't want to say. Is it bourbon or is it
bourbon.
whiskey? Bourbon. Yeah.
Bourbon.
Do you want to talk to me about that?
Oh, Bearcat. Yeah. So Bearcat is a slang term for a fiery spirited woman. What we were trying to do was to create a bourbon, kind of an not entry level, but an approachable bourbon for a wider market. And so we created two infusions. One of them is infused with espresso, and the other one is infused with citrus and spice, and so it has kind of an orange flavor. They're both 80 proof. They're both Kentucky bourbon. And so, we're out in a lot of markets doing a lot of good stuff and getting out there and, singing to the choir.
That's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I hope you guys are selling like hotcakes. It's been a pandemic. We're all a bunch of alcoholics now. So I hope your sales went through the roof.
It's good.
So, hey, you're at the ISPE Vendor Night. It's our first event in 2 years.
Yes.
What are you doing here?
Yeah. So, oddly enough, I left California.
That's what I heard.
Moved to Wisconsin. Bought a house. And 2 months later, they sent me to L.A. And so I've been in LA since October, doing a project for Kite.
Oh, you're at the site in Santa Monica.
El Segundo.
El Segundo.
I'm at the manufacturing.
I was there last week.
In
El Segundo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
TCFO3?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I know both you and I used to engage Vendor Night and all the other commuter conference and program. How did you cope during the pandemic? Did you miss that stuff?
It was a little bit out of sorts because you couldn't get and see what the current stuff was, and also not being around the colleagues. That part of it, the group learning. But it also, as you know, put us into a new realm of how you can do work.
Yeah.
And so if you got a good internet, you can go from the middle of Nevada and run a job almost.
I mean, I feel like we actually lost a lot of Bay Area residents throughout the pandemic because everybody realized they could go and move into Nevada quite literally and work remote as well. I'm going to ask a personal question. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, there were times where I was struggling with the loneliness and the lack of connectivity. How did you cope with that? Because, we're very hands-on when it comes to our work.
Yeah, so fortunately during that period of time, we were in design. And so that's really easy to do.
Yeah.
If we had, gone into construction, then there would have been a whole different situation. I was also very fortunate that I had a 1,200 square foot shop right below me, and so, I could work, and then I could go down there, and I could keep my mind occupied, and it was an awesome time. So,
we're coming out of it now, so hopefully we can maintain that and get back to a normal life.
Yeah, I would agree.
One last question. So you're at Kite right now. I'm going to ask you a general one. What's your outlook for yourself for the next 2-3 years? What are you going to be busy with?
Well, I'd like to, I love doing project management. I love, pharma. I've been in it for a while. I would like to find opportunities closer to home because I moved to Wisconsin to be with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
So...
What's happening? I hear Illumina. Isn't Illumina planning on building their largest facility out in Madison?
Illumina. Ooh.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I think you should get that and then hire me.
I would love to have you back. Are you kidding me?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be a pleasure. That. Hey, thank you so much for your time.
It's great to see you.
It's great to see you.
So I think that was really insightful from Mark. I mean, starting your own company is difficult in and of itself. Starting your own company during a pandemic when we're sort of doing everything over the internet, you lose that face-to-face contact is another thing. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about starting a company in an area that people are moving away from, such as folks in San Francisco moving to Nevada, you're in a little bit more of a pickle because not only do you have a little bit less of a talent pool at this point, you also lose that face-to-face contact. So it's sort of like a double whammy.
Yeah, and as you and I both know, EJ, the whole area of the U.S. is changing with biotech. Everybody knows about the Bay Area and Boston as the biotech mega hubs.
Yeah.
We've also heard about the rising of RTP, Salt Lake, Nevada, etc. So this is kind of a good segue into at least Ali Nadiri. Ali Nadiri and our very own Faraz talked about basically working and owning a company, remote status versus being in person, and does the Bay Area have enough talent to support a company like Nadiri Engineering? Is it there for companies, or is the better strategy to go to Nevada? It's a really interesting take, and I think it's a good time for us to hear it now.
I am here finally with the legend himself, Mr. Ali Nadiri, the man, the myth, the legend. If it wasn't for Ali, half the people here wouldn't have a job. I swear to you. If it wasn't for Ali Nadiri, there'd be no Delta Project Management.
Oh my God!
And so thank you for giving us a minute of your time. Thank you for being here. I haven't seen you since the pandemic started. What's going on?
We have learned to work from home. Yes, work. And so things are going well, and we're just trying to get back to it. And, it's good to see the old faces like yourself. And, I often think about all the colleagues and how they're doing and where they are and what they're doing. So, things are going good.
Well, Ali, I'm going to tell you it straight. You've honestly inspired an entire generation of people to become better team players, to work across the aisle in cross-functional groups. And I want to say, a lot of people don't know that when Matt, Scott, and myself, when we left Fluor, we joined Nadiri Engineering. And when it was time for us to leave, Ali was the one that gave us not just the blessing, but gave us the guidance on how to do it and how to sustain it, right? I never once got the impression that you were like, oh, these guys are going to be my competition. I felt like you were just extremely proud of us. Yeah. And I want you to know that that's shaped the entire culture of our company as well. That's awesome. You need to hear that from us. No, thank you.
Well, it takes a lot of respect and a lot of determination to be able to bring this up, and also acknowledge that. And I really acknowledge the fact that you guys were a bunch of really capable guys.
Oh, thank you.
And, I knew that you were going places and you would be successful. So why would I block the current?
Well, I got to say, we need more people like you in the industry. I've noticed, maybe because we've not been in person for the last 2 years, but looking around today, there is a lot of young talent out here, right? And with that, I feel like one of my worries is that the young talent is losing out on that in-person mentoring throughout the pandemic. What would be your solution to that? Is there a way we can catch that up?
Oh, yeah, you brought up a fantastic point, because, the culture that we were brought up and we were nurtured with, it was camaraderie and working together, working as a team, and seeing the mentorship. And that really went away during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can get that back is to go back to being, small teams with a mentorship, and do it just like the old days. And I feel bad for young people because they have not had the opportunity to experience and be blessed with that kind of a mentorship, that kind of a teamwork. Everybody's working on isolation. Everybody's working from their home. And, that's got to change.
And I'm looking forward to normality being resumed as well. I see it on the personal front, being parents ourselves. You're a great dad. You've inspired me to be somewhere close. I'm trying to. Dude, mine are 21 and 18 now. Can you believe it? Yeah. I worried about my oldest, who's in college, because she, it's not in-person tuition and so on. They're just getting back to it. I want to leave us with one last question. Now that we're starting to get back to normal, and we're seeing, again, we're going through a very large capital expenditure cycle in the Bay Area, is it the case that we're just simply not ready for an expansion of the industry, or are we going to have to lean in on, folks from other parts of the world, for instance? Do we have the skill set in the Bay Area to service the Bay Area biotech industry?
Well, we're going to have to acquire the skills. The traditional skills that we've had is rapidly changing. It's changing to the T cell, it's changing to genomics, it's changing to gene engineering. And those scales of operations are extremely different from the aseptic, large-scale processes. Yeah. And we have to adapt to it. And honestly, it's a different world, and it's a different dynamics. The capital expenditure is completely different. But the young guys would be the best guys to be positioned in that situation and learn it.
Hey, I've noticed you're shepherding young Cameron into the industry. How's he adjusting?
He's doing great.
He's doing great.
Yeah, he's doing automation
He's a very popular
work.
guy, I gotta tell you. Everybody loves Cameron.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Anyway, you got to tell him to come and join us, though. I reached out to him and he declined.
I know.
Well, we got to have a Nigeri on the team.
Hey, when you're looking for work, you get an offer. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
especially from Delta Project Management, which is a very good company. So that's a great news.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you for the mentoring. Please keep doing what you're doing. I don't know how the hell you stay looking so young, and I'm just aging. Look, I'm grayer than you are.
Man, Ali and Faraz are just absolute legends. They're so well connected, and these guys really have a good understanding of it.
Goals.
The state, yeah, they really are. The status of biotech, and that's especially from like a West Coast to East Coast mentality too. Just the difference. We've already heard about Nevada from Mark. Ali's talking about the sourcing and talent in San Francisco, and it's interesting to see, what's going to happen with biotech individuals in the future. Are we going to be traveling more? Are we all going to be more Northeast based? I wonder how it's going to look.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think we have a really good example here at Delta alone. We had a younger individual, Stan, who came from the East Coast. I think he was already in Boston.
He taught me actually my first job at Delta. He was he was my trainer. Yeah.
Wow. See, okay, so that's pretty interesting. So he goes from the East Coast, supporting clients on the East Coast, over to the West Coast, still supporting clients on the East Coast. And I think he also has to have some correspondence with some folks in other countries too. So I think it might be pretty interesting to hear what he has to say regarding what's it like to come to the West Coast from the East Coast, and how is it working with folks in all these different time zones.
Okay, great. Hey, I've got Stan with me. Stan joined us on the East Coast several years ago.
That's correct.
Relocated to the West Coast. And absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us at the ISPE Vendor Night. Hope you're having a good night.
Yeah.
Got a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
I think you've got a really good understanding of, you've got a good exposure to your coworkers on the East Coast, your coworkers on the West Coast. I want to start by asking you, is there a difference? Is there a difference in culture and approach, the way we do things here, and relative to the way things get done on the East Coast? Did you notice anything like that?
So I guess on the East Coast, as you can see with our team over led by Nate, they're very metrics driven. They're very hardworking. Over here on the West Coast, it's also the same, but there's also a little bit more laid back and fun atmosphere that the East Coast might not have. They're a little bit more, probably because due to the weather, a little maybe potentially grayer. They're a little bit sullen, but they get their job and get their work done. But out here on the West Coast, this weather's amazing. There's so much to do, but everybody here still gets their job done and gets to enjoy the weather too.
That's excellent. I mean, it's a pleasure to have you here as well, always. And let me ask you a technical question, actually. What are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm a project manager at Servier Pharmaceuticals, and we're prepping for launch in China for one of their drugs, Tipsova. And we just got approval a couple weeks ago, right after the Chinese Lunar New Year. So it's all hands on deck right now, making sure everything's on track to meet the deliverables there to get those drugs to patients over there.
That sounds like a lot of pressure. How'd you cope with that? Are there scheduling conflicts that you have to manage and resolve?
Yeah, there are a lot of schedule conflicts due to just the worldwide nature of the pharmaceutical industry. It's a French company. We're working with coworkers on the East Coast, in France also as well. So as you can tell, scheduling a meeting between everybody on the East Coast, West Coast, and France is a little bit painful sometimes, but we make it work. Other than that, the coworkers across the world are very helpful, and we're all striving for a good cause and trying to push this product to market.
And how do you bring 3-4 different, critically different working cultures to work in unison under a shared objective? What are the key challenges that you've come across?
First thing's probably just the time zone difference, and also there might be cultural or language barrier. Since we're all working in the Zoom culture right now, there are technical difficulties. with like how somebody's internet might not be as good if their home internet might not be as good as their work internet. So being in a conference call with somebody in France, there might be a language barrier issue in addition to like technical issues. So we have just have to like push through that and just try to get things done.
Hey, I'm going to ask you a candid question, right? Because you've mentioned that you've enjoyed the relocation from the East Coast to the West Coast. Is that something that you've been looking for in your career, the ability to travel and take on different challenges?
Yeah, definitely. Like just growing up on the East Coast, I've pretty much explored most of the Northeast. I love the fall and the winter there. But I felt it was like time to just turn over a new leaf, see what the West has to offer. Check out the West Coast, because like they say, West Coast, best coast, right?
Well, I've not heard that expression, but and I think the folks on the East Coast may have an issue with that.
A little bit. They might have a little bit.
Hey, what's that discovery when you moved here in the Bay Area where you just blew your mind?
Oh my gosh, so I'm an avid cyclist, so just like stepping outside 20 minutes, going to hills, just doing those crazy climbs, because back east we don't have these climbs. They're just a lot of rolly New England meadows, hills. Back out over in the west, it's just you're just gonna go up a mountain, you're gonna keep chugging along for 7 miles and then just bomb down.
You know what? I need to take you to Montara Mountain. It's a 14% grade.
Oh, let's do it.
It's a beautiful ride. You go over Montara Mountain and you pop up in Pacifica.
Yeah.
On the old Highway 1, right, which is now a goat trail.
Woo!
It is a challenge, so look forward to that. Hey, thank you so much for your time, Stan. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for showing your support for this event as well. And, you know, the whole team really enjoys your input. And what a team player.
Cheers.
Thanks again, Stan.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So I think it's a really interesting perspective from Stan on what's it like coming to the West Coast from the East Coast and kind of resuming, you know, your normal operations working on East Coast time. In the same vein, though, we do have another Deltoid who actually came back to Delta. He was poached from us to a client site, and he decided to come back to Delta, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting to hear why. So without further ado, Andrew Wang.
Welcome to Andrew Wang.
Thanks for having me.
Andrew, obviously, some of you may already know, is a former employee who went out on a walkabout, flexed his process engineering muscles and his automation engineering muscles, and has decided that Delta is home once more. Hey, Andrew, welcome home.
Excited to be back.
Hey, tell us about what you've been up to in the intervening years.
Oh, you know, just flexing my process engineering muscles, like you said. Been at AstraZeneca doing some work on inhaled biologics, gaining some good knowledge. And now I'm back at Delta, ready to share that knowledge.
It's a real pleasure to have you back in the team. It felt like you never left, right? People really did talk about you all the time, and I feel like you're walking back into a familiar culture. But I'd like to ask you, in the years that you were gone, you've got a lot of great experience. What are you looking forward to bringing to Delta Project Management this time around?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just matured in my career. I feel like I can bring a different perspective that I didn't before. I think one thing that actually made me want to leave AstraZeneca is, working for a big company, you realize there are a lot of pros and cons for working with a big company, you know? So I feel like the reason why I wanted to come back to Delta is because it's a smaller company, I can make more of an impact. But on the other hand, I think there are good things about working for a big company, like processes that I can bring to a smaller company like Delta, things that can make us be more consistent, have more control for what we do, those types of things. So just like a different perspective from where I was before, because Delta was my first company.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if I remember correctly, when you joined, you're very much in a validation specialist role. I'm thinking this time around, you probably are looking more for an engineering, a manager, a leadership role in terms of providing engineered solutions. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah. I'm rejoining as a technical project manager, so I'll be in the engineering realm. I'll be working on a tech transfer project. So yeah, I was really excited to see. That was one of the reasons I left Delta. Is at the time that I left, there weren't engineering related opportunities. So I was really excited to see that Delta's expanded into that area. And I'm really excited to help grow it.
Oh, man, we're excited to have you back. One final question. what was the biggest change when you walked back in?
Biggest change? I don't know. Biggest change, maybe things are a little more established now. Some of the processes and the ways of working are a little bit more ironed out, less shooting from the hip. But I don't know. Actually, I think a lot of things are still the same, and I think that's a positive. I think the culture is still really strong with Delta, and that's one of the primary reasons why I wanted to join. So,
brilliant. Yeah. Well, Andrew, I speak on behalf of everyone in the company, and we're absolutely delighted to have you back. You're brilliant, and look forward to engaging you on some really interesting projects in the coming days, weeks, and months. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks for us.
All right.
That was great to hear back from Andrew Wang. And I know we left Delta, which is fine. That's all professionalism. But he ended up coming back to kind of grow his career and to help Delta. And I think, especially for Scott and for us, that means a lot to that whole group because we're a really tight-knit community. So we're really lucky to have him back. And I'm excited to see how the community that is Delta can support him and he can also support us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Deltoids belong in the family and they'll always be part of the family, whether they're working somewhere else or working with Delta. But on that note, we're stoked to see everyone at the next public event. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. We're excited to bring you content that relates to the biotech realm, as well as industry news, ISPE highlights, Delta PM highlights. Please share the podcast with your friends or anyone in the biotech industry. We also do educational streams in addition to these podcasts. So if you want to learn more about CQV, project or program management, digital transformation, or just come and have fun, feel free to check us out at twitch.com/DeltaPM.
Yeah, we'll make sure to throw that in the notes for the show. You should see them in your description, whether you're on Spotify, Apple, etc. We'll try and include those. But, without further ado, we just want to once again thank all the ISPE volunteers. Super happy to see all of you. And a special thanks for Ross and Scott, as well as for Ross again and Ala for their great interviewing skills during the ISPE event. Thank you from behind the scenes to Darren Ellingson for your, saving us in all technology needs that we have. I constantly message you all the time about any question I have, whether it's tech, software, hardware, it doesn't matter. And honestly, just a great person and a leader. Also, thanks to my co-host over here, EJ. He's a pleasure to work with. I really appreciate everything you do at Delta, ISPE for myself, and I'm glad to call you a friend now.
Yeah, likewise. Andrew, you're one of the hardest working people I know. If something needs to get done, you're the first to volunteer to do it, and you do it really fast, and you do it really well. So thank you. And lastly, our next episode will be a panel discussion and commentary from the ISPE CEO night aspect of Vendor Night, where we'll have a couple more folks talk about what's new in their realm, what's coming down their pipeline, and expanding a little bit more on current biotech technologies.
It's going to be awesome. It's a good little 5-year outlook, and I think that's really important for all of us as industry professionals to always consider what's happening in a year from now, 5 years, 10, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.